Hello, everyone, and good whatever moment of the day you are enjoying on your time zones. Welcome to our Elevating HR's Public Speaking Skills Conversation, part of the February series. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co host for the next hour. We have Jessa working her magic backstage, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers. I do see the comments already coming in. It's great to see that technology works. And please do continue to drop a note. Just let us know where you're listening in from or where you're watching us from. That's how we travel vicariously around the world with each and every one of you. Now, Jessa, let's make the most out of our time here today. Please help me bring the speakers on the stage, and while they just smile and get used to seeing their faces next to each other, I will encourage everybody in the audience to also consider the comments, their own space of conversation. So, whatever it is that we are talking about with our panelists, always make sure that you drop your own ideas, your own stories, your own take on the topic. And that's a wonderful way to keep the community growing and learning together. Also, please do drop us questions. Mindful of the fact that we might not be able to bring all of them into our conversation, but we will try to keep this topic alive to our best ability. Now, today we are here to talk about public speaking, and especially about public speaking for HR. What I would ask you to do, you're all friends, you're all Hacking HR veterans, so you know the drill by now. The e-mic will travel clockwise on my screen, and I will ask you just firstly shortly introduce yourselves. And I was curious, what makes the topic of public speaking so meaningful to you personally that you decided, you know what, I'm going to be there for 1 hour? So, Candace, a joy to see you. It's been a while, and I was so happy to see your name popping up.
Oh, thank you so much, Manola. I'm just so happy to be here on this topic. So, Candice Giesbrecht, I'm the Director of People Culture and Engagement with the Canadian Mental Health Association in Kelowna, BC, which is in Western Canada. This topic is such a big deal to me because I was one of those millions, I think, who were absolutely terrified of it. I had panic attacks in front of any groups that I had to, my face would go beet red, and this was a skill that one of my leaders early on said, you need to be good at this, and I believe in you, and I'm here to help you develop in this skill. And I think I used the skills that I was taught during that time, and I had the privilege of working under someone who had a PhD in communications, so it was horrifying and stressful, and some of the best, most important equipping I've ever been given. I use it every week, at least. So that's why I'm here, is to share anything I've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Wonderful. Thank you, Candace. Crystal, so good to see you and to have you in this conversation.
Yes, hello everyone. I am so happy to be here. I'm Crystal Alegbaleye. I'm the Director of HR at TBWA Chiat Day. I know that is a mouthful, but we are an advertising agency based in Los Angeles, California. And public speaking is important for me, similar to Candace's sharing in her background. Just speaking in general is absolutely terrifying for me. And so I think when I started out in HR, I really came to the realization that public speaking, yes, it can be in front of a crowd of masses, but also it can be in these intimate one-on-one interactions and connections I have with people day to day. And so with that knowledge, that's really helped. The practice and the repetition has really helped transform my career and has helped elevate my visibility and my experience as an HR practitioner. And I'm still learning in this sphere every day. And so I'm happy to be part of this group, sharing some learnings of my experience.
Wonderful. Jess, I think this is my lucky week, twice already in the same week to have you on my screen.
Yeah, we're really lucky that we get to work together twice. I'm really excited to be with all of you. Hi, my name is Jess Goldberg. I am a leadership and communications instructor. I teach at Columbia University, and I also run leadership and communication courses for individuals and for companies. And I'm an executive presence coach. And the reason that communication is so important to me is that I believe in every moment we are public speaking in some way. Even when we're staying silent, I think we're actually still saying something. And so it's really important that we are able to take charge of what we want to say and how we want to communicate to the world around us. I think that we can have incredible ripple effects when we are able to communicate clearly and effectively our own desires, our own needs, and the good that we want to see in the world.
Wonderful. Tracy, I was happy to see you part of this panel and on this particular topic, and I actually quite missed you in a conversation.
I've missed you too, Manola, and thank you. And yes, I chose this really, really intentionally. So I'm Tracy Spanenberg. I should say, I am no longer the Chief People Officer of the Granite Group, based in Concord, New Hampshire. Last month, I went out on my own to do fractional HR consulting and advising in the distribution and manufacturing industries, and also public speaking. So much like Candace and Crystal, I found public speaking terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I never spoke at all, even through school. I would speak in small group settings, and then I had the opportunity to do some public speaking at a local HR group. Just fell into it. Somebody asked me to co-present, and for some reason I said yes. And that actually kicked off a wild part of my career. I never thought anybody would want me on stage, let alone pay me to do it. So that's actually the third part of my my business. So still very much learning, still very much a student of all things public speaking, but it's enhanced my career, not just that part, but when I was a full-time Chief People Officer, it made me so much better at my job in many different ways.
And last but not least, making this panel whole and wholesome and what it can be, it's Jason. It's so great to see you.
Hey, Manola. First of all, thanks. I love being back. I can't wait to hear what the rest of the panelists say. I've pinged a few of you guys on LinkedIn, and so I already have the feeling that this is going to be an awesome, probably the best one all day, right? So my name is Jasani Courtney. I'm out of the great state of Texas, down here in Houston. I have the honor to be blessed to serve the American Bureau of Shipping as its Vice President of Human Resources. In a nutshell, I manage all the HR operations in North and South America, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So pretty much everything except Asia. And I will tell you, throughout my lifetime, my adult career, whether it was when I was an officer in the Army or whatever, I've always had to speak in front of people. When I was in school, I was the class clown. So, being able to actively convey my jokes, even though I end up in the principal's office sometimes, provided more effective message delivery, right? So, but I mean, the reason why I was so excited about this is that we as HR professionals, we have a lot to say. We have a lot of value to give to the organization. And if we're not able to effectively communicate that, whether it's in front of one person, a major stakeholder, a group of, a board of directors, or even during a town hall, sometimes that message can get lost. And so, a lot of us are introverts, can't you tell I'm an introvert? No, I'm not. But not all of us are cut from the same cloth. Not all of us shine in the same way. And so, one of the things I hope we're able to deliver to some of the audience is that, you don't have to be this boisterous person to be an effective public speaker. You just have to be passionate and, most of all, authentic. So hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about that throughout our dialogue today.
Absolutely. I just want to say that I did pick up on a few conversation candies. They went on mental Post-it. So we will pick up on the topic of public speaking, especially for people who feel nervous about it. But also, Jasana, just listening to you, you gave me an idea. We will pick up on public speaking for raging extroverts and how that helps them or can come with their own challenges. Now, before we move very, very deep into the technicalities and logistics and skills and whatnots of public speaking, I would really invite all of you, just let's take a few minutes and look at, is there a special HR flavor to public speaking? Is there a particular way in which HR professionals harness public speaking in their day-to-day jobs, in their interactions? So what makes public speaking HR? And, I always go diagonally, which means, Jessa, you will be the pioneer for this one. And then everybody, unmuting competition open, you build your own conversation. So Jess, the HR flavor of public speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So for HR professionals, in every moment you are public speaking, when you are talking to your employees, when you are bringing a new message, when you're delivering a new training protocol that you need to have, when you're delivering new information that the CEO needs you to deliver, all of that, every time you give an announcement, even sometimes, I would call public speaking sometimes when you're writing an company message that you're sending out to in some ways. Every moment is a moment for you to define how you are going to represent the company, how you're going to represent yourself, and how you're going to speak to your audience, which is your employees. And really the key thing for HR professionals is really to think about, who is your audience? Who are you speaking to in each moment? And most of the time you got to figure out what is the things that matter most to them, and make sure that you're talking to that core message of the things that matter to them. Not just what matters to you, not just what matters to your CEO, but what actually matters to the employees.
I love what you just said, Jess, and what occurs to me with this HR nuance is how important and critical our role is as HR leaders to equip our leaders to be also considering their audience. And so I think all of us have had those experiences where we're trying to help our leaders to understand the impact of their words on their team or on their coworkers or on their peers and so on. And so, asking those coaching kinds of or HR related questions where, we're saying, okay, you've made this decision, or this decision needs to be rolled out. So when we consider the audience that's going to be on the receiving end of this message, at the end of this announcement, what do we want them to come away with? What do we want them to feel? What do we want them to think? What's the most important message? What's the purpose in this particular message that we're trying to convey? And so, and while that's a very communications kind of a skill, is to think, what's my purpose, and what are the ways that I'm going to try and get this across, and who is my audience? Coaching the people within our organization to consider that, I think is part of the best parts of HR.
Tracy.
I love what Jess and Candace shared, and I wanted to share something else, because I approach things very differently in a way that's comfortable for me, and I see some introversion going through the threads. I'm a very deep introvert, and so the way I look at public speaking is less like, oh, it's public speaking, right? And I look at combining that, the things that HR tends to be pretty good at: storytelling, influence, vulnerability, authenticity, and bringing that all together and looking at it that way, because those are some of the things that make a really good public speaker. It's also a more comfortable place for HR professionals, and it's also, a good place to start to think about it. So if it's overwhelming, developing those public speaking skills, think about it a different way.
Love the reframing.
I guess I'll jump in. So, I will always tell my fellow HR professionals, like, regardless of your topic, it could be highly technical. It could be something about a new legislation that passed you got to educate managers on, or it could be doing a business case for a new project or program you're trying to get across the budget finish line. Regardless of what it is, start off with an authentic heart. When we try to be someone else, or try to image or mirror someone else's style. People are smart. You can tell when someone's trying to sell you a false bill of goods or you're not being authentic. If you're nervous, if anyone in the audience is nervous about public speaking and the idea of getting in front of anyone other than, your stuffed animals on your bed, just terrifies the crap out of you. First of all, remember, I would always caution people of going on YouTube and getting advice from someone who's like an extrovert, because that's not your style. That's not how, I'm a religious person. So that's not how the man upstairs built you. We're all built uniquely, and we have to use those unique talents. And so if you're an introvert, shine in that, right? Shine in that. You don't have to come out there and be like Jasani and just and dominate the room. Be home to yourself and just figure out ways to communicate your message in a true and authentic manner. Because I will tell you, especially if it's employees, I've done a number of town hall meetings where we've had to deliver less than positive news. Where you lose your audience is when you try to, be disingenuous about the actual factuals of what you're delivering. You start losing your audience, and that's when you start having the whole mob thing. People can absorb bad news. People can deal with unpleasant messages, as long as they feel like you're coming from an authentic place. But if you don't, and you try to be like someone else, and you're trying, you've been an introvert 99% of the time during the work while you're at the coffee machine, but all of a sudden you come out and try to be someone else, people can pick up on that. And so not only are you fighting the issue with whatever message you're trying to deliver, you got people questioning who is it I'm listening to. So you don't want to fight two battles on one front when you're delivering your message. So, I will start off with, my starting part is be true to yourself. Figure out who you are. If you're an introvert, shine in that. If you're an extrovert, glow in that. And then kind of build yourself off of that and look for examples that best reflect your natural state and demeanor.
And I think if I may just add in just 2 cents into what all of the panel has shared already, the through line for me is, and again, thinking about our role, the essence of the title, human resources, right? Leading with humanity. And so to summate what everyone said and how I try to lead as an HR professional, and certainly from a communications and public speaking perspective, is to remember that we are all human. And so, I, as an introvert, I stumble over my words. I'm a processor. Sometimes it doesn't come out perfectly, and that's okay, because I think people resonate with that and they see it that masking is not evident. When I show up as Crystal. And so I think that there are people that resonate with that, and people that can appreciate that and obviously can recognize that in this role as an HR professional, there is that credibility that I bring and the expertise that I have in the various parts of this role. But at the end of the day, as I'm communicating, it's empathy first. It's a human people first approach. And so in that sense, communicating with authenticity, being very candid in communication as well, to the extent that I can be, whether it is delivering really challenging news or really exciting news, the messaging and how I shape it through that lens can help people resonate it and receive it in a meaningful way.
I love under how many perspectives you all framed and reframed public speaking for HR. But that also made me curious about something. Could you share some of the misconceptions or misassumptions about public speaking that you have come across within the HR space? And if it's okay with you, Tracy, I would like to invite you up for this one.
Oh, misconceptions about public speaking in HR. I think one of the biggest ones, if you're talking about external, actually getting up on a stage and speaking, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's extraordinarily hard to break into. I think that for me, it was never on my bingo card, never. I was 45, I think, before I got on the stage. Never something I thought I was going to do. But it ended up happening, and then it ended up happening again and again and again and again and again. And so I think people just think, even people like me who maybe, you know, I didn't have an interest, but say you're an introvert, but you have an interest in that. It seems so far out of reach, at least to a lot of people that I talk to. And this is public speaking. There's companies, there's organizations, there's all kinds of places dying for public speakers. And I talked to a friend the other day who was talking about, you know, I really want to do this, but I have nothing to say. Everybody's got something to say. Everybody's got something to share. Everyone has a story, and that story just may be something that somebody needs to hear that day. So I don't mean to say that it's not hard. It is hard, but there are a lot more opportunities than I think that people think there are. And panels are a great way to get started because, like Crystal, I stumble over my words and I, you know, show up as me all the time, and you take me as you get me or you don't, right? And I'm not for everybody, and I'm okay with that. And so I think it's just start if somebody has any sort of interest, or if you even want to be better at your job, start doing things like this. It's hard at first, but it gets easier and easier every time. I don't think I answered your question, Manola, but that's in a roundabout way that sort of we sort of got there.
Public speaking grows in its own space, so we are just enjoying the wisdom. Who wants to build on that? Jess?
I'm happy to build on that. I think that there's two really big misconceptions about public speaking, especially in the HR space. And the first one is something that Nassim and Crystal both touched on, which is that this idea that we have to be perfect, that we have to be an entertainer, we have to come up and we have to be able to say things in a flowery way, that we have to be able to put on a show for everyone. But that's not actually what's necessary. And a lot of you all have been touching on this. What's necessary is that human touch, being able to connect with our audience, being able to connect with our employees, being able to actually speak to them in a way that they can hear us. And that doesn't matter if you stumble over your words. That doesn't matter if you are perfectly entertaining. What matters is that your heart and your intention is there. And that's the first big misconception. The second big misconception is that you have to be confident, you have to be an extrovert, which is something that we've been talking about here, but it's not that. I like to say, do it scared. It's okay if you are afraid, if you're scared, if you're nervous, because the biggest thing I think that's holding a lot of us back is anxiety. And what anxiety is an overestimation of a threat and an underestimation of our ability to deal with that threat. So what I mean by that is we are overestimating how bad it will be if we do stumble over our words, and underestimating how much capacity we actually have to deal with if something went wrong. If we did stumble over our words, we can pick back up, we can make mistakes, and it's okay. So I just encourage you all that when you're scared, do it scared.
I'll jump in right behind Jess. Jess, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what is the definition of courage? Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to stand up and persevere in the face of fear. And that's what it's all about. You don't have to be an extrovert. And I think we have some old school leaders who try to, again, that cookie cutter mentality of what a great speaker. Okay, he or she's a natural born speaker. They didn't come out of the womb being a great speaker. They had life experiences that helped them prepare for that. Some of us have the gift of gab better than others. I'm from Louisiana, so we talk quick all the time. So yeah, I get a lot of words out in the same amount of time. But we all have an evolution. We all have a path to get down. And and at the end of the day, for one of the biggest misconceptions is that folks, if you're a natural born speaker, you can just get up and do it. I've heard that before. Usually hear from BD folks. And remember, their job is to sell you something. So they're already starting off at a falsity in my viewpoint. But the biggest thing I would say is, know your topic. So for example, when you're going on an interview, that is when you should definitely shine. It doesn't even matter, that's not necessarily public speaking, but it's more of a one-on-one. But why do people tend to be great interviewers? Because each and every person is the subject matter expert of the main topic, which is you. All right. So when you get up to go speak, have confidence, do your research. There comes courage knowing what it is you're talking about. When you know that you know that you know, and you get on that stage, even if you get questions, it's like, no, I know this. I've been doing this for 20 years. Let me tell you why I fit, where this data comes from. And so you can deal with questions. And I think one of the fears that I hear from a lot of folks and from some of my own business partners who are nervous about speaking is, well, what if the managers ask me questions and what if I can't answer and things like that? it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay. I can tell you, I've been in HR for 22 years and I get asked questions. I was in a town hall one time and this one employee asked me a question and I'm the VP, right? So I'm supposed to be all knowing. I didn't know it. And the answer was, you know what? I don't have the answer for that. I will need to look into it and I'll follow back up with you. And again, you're going to keep hearing me beat that drum about authenticity. Be authentic. They will respect you for not knowing. You don't have to know everything. But I will say that there is power in knowing your topic. And don't be afraid if your boss tries to kind of set you up for failure a little bit and say, hey, go speak on this topic. And you have no idea what that is. And you have no clue what that topic is. Have the courage to say, hey, boss, I really appreciate the opportunity to do the public speaking. I want to grow in that space. I want to get better. I don't think I'm the best person to do that. And here's why. Don't shy away from challenges, but you also don't want to get yourself set up for failure because that won't help perpetuate, courage to speaking. But, I've turned down speaking engagements because I don't feel like I was qualified at the time to be the subject matter expert. And because I want it to be a great product every time I get in front of the stage and I want people to feel like they've learned something, not just listen to me droll on. I will say that. So I would give those two pieces of advice in terms of like misconceptions. You don't have to come out of the womb knowing how to be a public speaker. It is about that courage. It is about Jess was saying about standing in the face of fear and taking those little baby steps to build that skill set.
Well, we have a hot seat of going last competition going on between Candace and Crystal. Let's see who wants to be safe from that.
Hi.
Crystal.
Yeah. In hearing what the other panelists have shared and thinking about my own experience, I think a myth could be humor, the use of humor sometimes. And like, if you don't come across as a funny person, or, you don't really land a joke in like 30 seconds, then, you're going to lose the audience and your presentation is going to fall flat. I think for me, what I've really tried to focus on is letting my personality come through in other ways. My humor tends to be quite dry, and I know that doesn't necessarily resonate with everyone. So, rather than, in trying to inject a funny anecdote or a joke, I think about how I can establish a bit more credibility by letting my personality come through. And then that's sharing personal things about me that, I think are pretty safe to share, in terms of, for example, being an aerialist and how that, helps with my mind-body connection and how I show up and do various things in my day-to-day. And, that one piece of information might have someone come up to me afterwards and spark their interest in terms of, wait, what is aerial? What are you talking about? Or, oh my gosh, that's that Cirque du Soleil thing. Like, I've been thinking about it, and I think I want to take a class. Like, do you have any suggestions? And so I think just leading through that way, is a quirk that I've found personally to allow people to tune in and to trust that what I am saying makes some degree of sense, and that they can, again, see me as a real person. And so that's been a myth that I've been trying to, that myth around like leading with humor, or having to be like the funny person, is a myth that I've been trying to debunk for myself personally.
Wow. I just love, as always, learning from my fellow panelists here. Your question was a challenging one, Manola, because what I realize is that, I don't know what the myths are like within HR. I just know the myths that I believed, and the probably the biggest thing that I think I had to get over was that I thought I had to do it perfectly. And I was afraid of what happened if I didn't do it perfectly, and the consequences, because I worry about that. I worry about me messing this stuff up, like, and the consequences for my organization, or for my, leaders, or for staff, or, and so just putting so much pressure on myself to do it perfectly. And so, one of the biggest things that my mentor, my former boss, told me is that, Candace, this isn't about you. It's about the message, and he helped me to elevate, like to take the pressure off of me, and to put the weight on the message, and that realizing that my job was to bridge, but to be the bridge between the message and the audience. And so when I take myself out of the center, and when I put the message in the center, and think about, like, okay, so if the most important thing is that this particular group of people understand X, and doing the work to get super crystal clear about what that particular message is, then my job is to deliver that then how am I going to get that message over to this group of people, and what are the words that are going to matter the most, or what are the words that might, not help, and just like honing, but not for perfect deliver, like not so that I'm doing things perfectly, but so that the message is delivered as clearly as possible, which is an HR function. I mean, this is what we know is such a critical piece of healthy organizations, is that there's clear leadership, that there's clear information, that information seeking questions get information related answers, and so just like letting myself off the hook, and then also getting really comfortable with, and finding my own way of saying that. I have so many times gone back to audiences and saying, can I have a do-over? Because I'm concerned that I wasn't clear in the message that you needed to hear. And Sonny, what you were saying about, like, just like, first of all, getting comfortable, but also like getting comfortable with saying to an audience, it's so important to me that I get you the right answer to this. So I'm not going to wing it in this moment. I'm not gonna take a run at this until I'm really, really clear. And so I want to come back when I can give you a very clear answer, because you deserve that. And so in those town halls, or, in those situations, it can be very different than when we've got that opportunity to prepare that written communication, or prepare, sort of that statement or presentation that we deliver in a moment. But one of my like love it, hate it moments is when I can go back and say, I don't think I served you well with that last communication. And it's so important to me that I serve you well. So let me get super clear on your questions, and make sure that I can provide you with the information that's going to be the most helpful.
I love these answers. And as we are a couple of minutes into the second half of our time today, I just had a look through the comments, and someone mentioned singing in their church's choir. Someone asked, okay, how about having some sort of experience or previous exposure to performing arts? And that got me thinking, can you share if you have a hobby or a passion or an interest that is not necessarily directly connected to work, that helped you enhance your public speaking experience? I will share mine. I always find great help in my days of doing improv theater and stand-up comedy. And also I happened upon this book. It's called, and pardon the French, Karen Rinaldi's It's Great to Suck at Something. And she advocates for picking something I didn't pick public speaking to be terrible at, but I chose assembling IKEA furniture. But that is picking something that you're terrible at and celebrating it and getting comfortable with being imperfect. And that takes the pressure away from being perfect at all times. I will stop here my blabathon. So any hobbies, passions, interests outside of your core work that could help someone, whether introvert or extrovert, with their public speaking. And let's start with Jasana, and then we go from there.
All right. Yeah. So really quickly, the audience has actually put a couple of really great questions that I just want to blaze through really quickly. One person actually asked a question about, like, how do you stop your voice from shaking when presenting? And what you got to understand is the physiological aspect of it. The reason why your voice is trembling is either because of accelerated heart rate or reduced oxygen, and your body is quavering, trying to adapt to that. So sometimes, so I do the exact same thing at the very beginning if I'm doing a public speaking. Even though I've done it for years, I still get nervous because I don't know the audience. So breathing is really important, and regulating your breath and doing those things. And if it's your heart rate, that's just being nervous. And just understand that that's natural. All right. So you're not weird. You're not atypical. So hopefully those 2 quick tips help you really quickly in regards to that. So I do a podcast, and it's actually called My Friend in HR. So it is kind of related, but it's less of being kind of the front man for the employee, for the company, and more about, kind of what Hacking HR does, right? Try to give information to employees and workers who want to have a fulfilling career. So that really helps. But I'm also a gamer, and I stream, and so there's a lot of interesting personalities when you're streaming gaming. Folks come at you with a lot of constructive feedback about how you should play video games. And so you have to be able to deal with a virtual audience. But finally, I think it's something that many of us probably on this call can relate to. I am a parent of many kids. And so that requires public speaking. That you have to be able to get in front of your kids and say, no, we're not doing any of this, and here's why. And here's the pros and cons if you don't pay attention to what me and your mother says. So you get daily practice in terms of doing that. But yeah, I mean, I think Jess may have said, or it might have been Tracy. One of them says every opportunity to speak is an opportunity to do public speaking. And sometimes you'll be surprised. A lot of folks who are on this call who are nervous about speaking, who think they're introverts. I guarantee you, when you got to deliver a message at home, that introvert goes away, because it's all about, Mom or Daddy needs a minute to rest. I need you guys to calm down. Here's the message I'm trying to deliver. I need you to understand where I'm coming from. Otherwise, there'll be consequences. And it's amazing how effective we are as communicators when that happens. But anyway, that's my little spill on that.
Thank you.
I volunteer on a board of a local foundation. And so at every meeting, there's an opportunity to convey messages and to think about, either communicating my opinion or communicating my work, or and so in my private life, that's something that's important to me for a lot of reasons. But it's also a place where, as part of the board, I'm asked to communicate within my community as well.
I love this question. I actually didn't think this was an area of practice. This hobby that I'm about to share was an area of practice for me in public speaking until I thought about it a bit more, like for the past 3 minutes. So during the pandemic, I picked up aerial arts. And so it's, I know I mentioned a moment ago or a couple of moments ago, Cirque du Soleil. And so if you've seen any of these circus acts, there's various apparatuses that people are flying from. And it really just started as my one day and evening to get out of the house to break the monotony of being stuck inside all day. But what I've really found through that exploration over the past now 3 years is a community, and a really tight-knit community of people that support one another. And when we're practicing together, the instructor can coach us through a move, but as we're doing it, there are these various moves. I'm observing, I'm watching other people. They're asking me questions and guidance. I'm asking them for questions and guidance around how they're getting into certain moves. And what I'm realizing as I'm communicating with them is that I have to be very sharp in my direction. Like, put this leg here, or wrap the silk around your back this way. Or you want to slide down here, but at the 90-degree angle. And what I've realized is that that type of sharp communication has helped me cut out filler words a bit. Not saying that they've all but disappeared, but you can't really use fluffy language when you're trying to coach someone through a move that is potentially challenging, and if done incorrectly might have them in a precarious situation. So I love the community aspect of that activity, but for me as a public speaker, it's helped me become a little bit more sharp in my cues, and how I can, and thinking about that, it obviously helps me as a manager as I'm coaching my team through certain situations that they're navigating.
What a wonderful reflection. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tracy, Jess, where do we go next? Tracy.
I think a little bit different. I'm a little bit different in a lot of ways, but my brain works very logically, very fact-based, very analytical. So I have friends, and I often read advice, like take an acting class and do improv and things like that. And that works for a ton of people. And I think that's wonderful advice, but it definitely doesn't work for me. I can't act, I can't lie, which sucks. So in some ways it's kind of good, but I can't do any of that. So I had to figure out what worked for me. And for me, it was, my hobbies. I'm a huge pop culture nerd. I know Jasani understands that. Huge pop culture nerd, particularly 80s. I'm a huge Disney World fan, so much I have like ink everywhere, and I bring some of that into every presentation, and usually it shows up visually in the form of pictures. And I think that helps me be a little bit more comfortable, helps me show a little bit more of myself, and it helps me connect with others. And so I think I love that people are here, and I think there's a lot of people here that are looking for maybe tips on how to get started. And I think listen to a lot of people, and I think you should just, figure out what works for you. I don't make eye contact with the audience. I look just over everybody's head. I look at the audience as one big group. Like I'm talking to you specifically, one person, right? And so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And I look at it not as a public speech, but a conversation. And so those are some of the things that have helped me, and some of myself that I've brought in that I think has really helped me grow. And like Crystal, I think the ums and the ahs still maybe creep in once in a while, but I've largely gotten rid of those just from doing it over and over and over and over. Again, I didn't really answer your question, but throwing some stuff out there that I think is maybe helpful.
Wonderful. Jess.
Yeah, I think what you were saying was really valuable, Tracy. And I love all of the kind of counterintuitive ways that we are actually practicing public speaking. And so one that came to mind for me is I love to throw dinner parties and bringing different people from different parts of my life, family and friends together. And there's some element of that is a great example for all of you to be able to practice your public speaking, is when you bring different people together, you're kind of in charge of holding the space. You're in charge of facilitating the conversation between different people. And Tracy, you were talking about how important it is to, when we're public speaking, to think of it as a conversation. So the more opportunities we can practice having conversations with just slightly larger groups than what we normally do. So, normally we're in a one-on-one. Can you get the group size just a little bit larger? That helps you practice, and then it expands your capacity to deal with a larger and larger group. And so those small moments are really, really great to be able to practice that and create your own opportunities. Maybe you don't want to go to a hobby or a speaking or an acting class. You can create your own opportunities for public speaking within your community and the people that matter to you that already trust you and are already going to be okay if you stumble or if you describe the dish a little bit, too quickly. That's okay. So give yourself those opportunities first.
Well, Tracy, I'm actually very happy that you answered with your own spin previously, because you actually opened the door for my next question, and that is tips and tricks on how people can get started. And what I will ask you to do, whether you admitted to being an introvert or an extrovert, could you customize that answer? Because Jasane, I'm right there with you. being an extrovert is not always that much of a help because you tend to do certain things. So I will ask you to keep our audience safe from doing those things as extroverts. So where can people get started depending on whether they have their comfort zone, introvert or extrovert? And Crystal, I would ask you to open this one up.
Of course. If I may just reference what Jess stated in terms of finding your own community. As I started my professional career, one of the things that I found really helped me as I was preparing for presentations, as I was preparing for interviews, as I was preparing for how I was going to pitch my manager on this amazing thing that I think they should buy into. I really found that tapping into my own community and network of like really close friends who know me, who know how I speak, and who frankly can be very honest with me, can helped me in those various situations. And so I would take some of their time in sort of my preparation for these situations. Would ask them like, hey, do you have 30 minutes or do you have an hour? I'm prepping for this meeting or for this presentation, and could really use would really value your feedback. And so I would just kind of take them through a part of the presentation and would listen to their feedback. And I would try, and I would take that to heart as I try to shape the presentation based on their feedback in a way that I felt could help me show up a little better. So it was a network of close friends that I was familiar with and that I trusted and that I knew that had good intentions for, and wanted to see me do well. And that made me even more comfortable. And that's what I've seen some great comments in the chat in terms of Toastmasters and other groups. But I think even just tapping into your own personal network to start could be a great way to help you build that confidence that you and that practice that you need to get started.
Tracy.
Oh. And I love that the Crystal, what you said about the network. My network is everything to me. And I think, a few tips here. Tap into your network, yes, when you're practicing, but also let your network know you're interested. If you don't have a network, start to develop, reach out, connect on LinkedIn with any of us here. If somebody wants to talk and not sell me something, I will always connect with somebody I know. And I think most people do that, at least most people that I know. So, and I will always help people. I remember when my first big speech was solo speech was at HR Tech in Vegas. And I had somebody come watch and then connect with me after. And she's like, that was great. I wish I could do that. I'm like, you can do that. The next year, I went and watched her speak. And it's really, really cool to see that. So if you've been doing it for a while, I think get back and talk to somebody who maybe has been on a couple of stages and they'll help you. I think the other thing is when I first started, I wasn't alone. That helps a lot. So I have a really good friend, Michelle Strasburger. We had a podcast that I think we're going to dust off. And she's an extrovert. And so she always says she pushes me ahead and I pull her back. And so partnering with her, she'll kind of pull me out of my shell and I'll slow her down a little bit. And that dynamic works really, really well. And we've spoken a number of times together on different things. And so that can be a more comfortable space. I think panels are a great way to get started. Again, I mentioned that earlier. It's very comfortable, particularly on virtual panels. You can always turn your camera off if something horrible happens or you start to cry or you break down. I mean, nobody's going to think twice about that, right? It's a very comfortable space. So you just start talking about it. Start talking about your interest and people will help you. 100% people will help you.
I can go next. I think like I was a little tripped up with like getting started, if people want to get started, so get started where, and so, I mean, depending on what people's hopes are, like whether it's, just getting more confident in terms of speaking at a meeting, or pitching those big ideas where you're feeling really vulnerable, or whether it's a stage with a full audience. And so a couple suggestions I just have is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And even if you are, just get super comfortable with the fact that that's going to happen. Some of the ways that I do that are, if it's a stage, if it's a big presentation in a group, for me, something that really, really, really helps is walking that room physically before I'm actually on the stage. If I can get a feeling for what it feels like to sit in those seats and look at that stage, or, to try and get some of those perspectives, if I can feel how hot the lights are or how blinding they are, or because some of those things have been the kinds of things that have caught me really off guard in the past. Is just, I've practiced maybe with the PowerPoint or with the slides, but when those lights are on, it's like, whoa, this is overwhelming. And so I've actually, a couple of, more than once, and it's a strategy when I can do it, I want to, I've actually tried to meet some of the people who are sitting in those first few rows, so that I can, and I even ask them, hey, if would it be okay if I look your way while I'm up on the stage, and know that I'm not targeting you, but just to locate someone. And they're like, sure, yeah, okay. And then I've actually asked permission for some safe people to look at as I'm getting up on the stage. And then breathing, it's something I do every single time before I get out on stage, because I have discovered the hard way that my fly was open. One time I also passed out in the worst thing almost that I actually passed out on stage. So it happened. And a friend of mine fell off the stage because she didn't see that there were some stairs there. So like, I've seen some of these things happen, and I lived and was okay. And sometimes I've even told those things. And sometimes if it's feeling like one of those days where I'm a little more nervous than normal and the breathing isn't working, I've asked for a stool so that I can, so that I can get some physical grounding, so that I can make sure that the message gets across, because that's what's most important. Mm-hmm. And then the final thing, just in terms of prep, was that I worked really hard, and I talked to a lot of really smart people to help me develop some templates that help me to prepare my message, so that I'm not starting from scratch, kind of like, and getting nervous in between. And so I have a few templates that I've been pulling out for decades, and they really, really help me.
I'll jump in. So first of all, I want to give some special attention to what Candace just said. Candace, for those folks who watch or listen to this thing, Candace just gave you public speaking gold. And here's why. Again, I mentioned earlier about there's a physiological aspect if you're nervous, and the breathing and things like that. And the stool thing is powerful, because literally what happens is that you sit down, and when you sit down, the airflow is actually different, and it actually gets to your brain, gets to your heart, and actually calms you down a whole lot better. It's not just to relax. So again, it's, if you know your body and you know how you tend to react to stress, you can actually ask the moderators or whoever's putting on the public speaking, I'd like to have a glass of water here. That's why a lot of comedians have glasses of water when you see them perform. It's not just because of dry mouth. It's about drinking water. The temperature conflict, I'm getting real nerdy here. The temperature conflict actually has a reaction in terms of how your body processes oxygen. So anyway, Candace, good stuff on there. A lot of people in the chat have talked about Toastmasters. I myself am in Toastmasters. It is a great way to get started. The way they walk you through in terms of, like, sometimes you're an evaluator. Sometimes you're the one doing the public speaking. Sometimes you're I think it's called the grammarian, where they check the ums and the ahs and things like that. I just did 3 just now, literally just now. I did 3 ums. But there's a lot of great things. It's not, Toastmasters isn't always about getting up and do public speaking. They approach it from a bunch of different avenues, and the memberships typically are not very expensive. And, sometimes you can include it as part of your development goals, and maybe your company will even pay for those. But, somebody says, how do you get started, in terms of little tips and things like that. Your network is big. When I wanted to start public speaking, I just kind of put it out there, and you start getting involved. Again, Hacking HR. is a great way of getting started because they have a lot of virtual panels. And so if you have counsel to give, if you have knowledge to share, that's a really great way of doing it because you don't see the audience. You get to interact with each other like we are together. And it's a great opening to public speaking and helping you do that. But do start small. Don't go in there into Carnegie Hall in your first speech if you're not used to that. And then finally, I would just, again, being prepared. Don't wing it. I am what you would call a master procrastinator. Even in my undergrad and university and things like that, I was that guy who could cram and I'd be great the next day. Doesn't really work very well with public speaking because your brain is just your brain and you can't force information into it. But it's also not about memorizing the speech either. Just knowing your topic, being comfortable in your topic, knowing that you know. Another little tip is, the only thing I would say maybe consider memorizing is maybe your intro. Where, is it one of those casual discussions where you're going to speak about yourself? I have noticed that when I'm speaking in front of a bunch of strangers, again, I am Earth's subject matter expert on Jasani Courtney. I can speak about me all day. And so there's comfort in me in me having that discussion. All right, so who is this in front of you? My name is Jasani Courtney. I'm from a small town in North Louisiana called Natchitoches, Louisiana. If you watch Film Magnolias, that movie, that's where it's filmed from. And half the folks who are Gen X's will start clapping, and now you got buy-in, and now you're just off to the races. And you feel comfortable because you're talking about something, and then you start going into your subject matter expert. Crystal mentioned it earlier. Sometimes starting off with a joke, depending on the topic, isn't the best thing. And if humor is not your skill set, I agree with her 147%. Jokes may not be the best thing because it just becomes awkward for everybody. But yeah, just always be prepared. And the last thing I'll share is, remember, folks, slides, PowerPoints are aids. They are enhancements to your speech. They are not the speech. Folks didn't buy a ticket or fly to a conference to hear you read the slide. You could have just emailed it to everyone. So just remember, your slides are an enhancement. I actually am I'm a minimalist. I keep pictures and a few bullet points, and I'll speak to them because guess what? I prepared and I know my topic. So hopefully some of those tips were able to help a few people out there.
Thank you so much. Jess, bring us home on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone gave such amazing tips for how people can get started and where to look. And I'd love to just hone in on one part of the question that you asked, which are tips and tricks for people who are both introverts and the kind of things to be concerned or watch out for if you're an extrovert. So if you are an introvert, if you get nervous before public speaking, Jasani was talking a lot about regulating yourself. That is so incredibly important to be able to regulate ourselves before we go into. So, we were talking about the breath and the stool that you could use. But one thing that I really like to use is I will put earbuds in and I'll listen to music, especially because I tend to get the jitters. So you have to know yourself and know your body and know what you need. But I tend to get the jitters. So even before this talk right now, I put a song on and I was just kind of dancing around in my room. And what that does is it brings in kind of good excitement, energy within me. It allows me to kind of transform some of that anxiety into a little bit more of excitement because those kind of run on the same pathway system within your nervous system. So if you can move the anxiety into excitement, it can also really help you in your performance. And then for extroverts, one of the things that can be really problematic that happens for extroverts is you start to become an actor, more of and less connected. So I'm bringing us back home to one of the beginning threads that we talked about, which is you have to be able to connect with your audience. Don't get caught up in your performance. No one cares how great you speak every word if what you're saying doesn't resonate with them. So that is really the biggest tip I have for those of you who are excited about speaking and excited about being able to perform in some way. Remember to connect it back. It's not about you. It's about the audience. It's about your employees. It's about those that you're speaking to.
Absolutely wonderful tips, all of them. And it's super, super painfully frustrating to say we are 1-2 minutes maximum away from wrapping this conversation up. I will just add 2 tips to what Jasana and Candace said about a glass of water or a bottle of water. And this is something that stand-up comedians do. If you have that, you have to put it somewhere, on a stool, on a table. And sometimes what I do If I feel like I lost my train of thought, that I will just have a sip of water, because that gives me a perfectly reasonable reason while my brain just sits there loading and rebooting from CD. But also you can put a very small piece of paper with just the key points. And while you drink sip of water, you can have a quick look of, where you are in your speech. Now, before we wrap this up, the mic drop punchline. One skill, so one word or 2 words if the skill has a two-word name. One skill that you consider fundamental for public speaking. Extra points go to skills that are not naturally the first ones to be associated with public speaking. And what I will do, again, in the interest of time, I will pass the mic around as you appear on my screen. I will give you a few more seconds to think about it. I will thank everybody in the audience for being here today. It was recorded. This panel was recorded. You can always go back either to hackinghrlab.io or our LinkedIn space, and you can re-listen or recommend it. Now, skills. Candace, one skill, no explanation.
Practice.
Crystal.
Feedback.
Jess.
Do it scared.
Tracy.
Curiosity.
And Jasana.
Be authentic.
And I will add something that you mentioned very early on in our conversation: storytelling. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Also, thank you, Jessa, for taking such amazing care of us, as usual. And I hope you will enjoy the rest of our February series. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Manola.